In this tutorial, we'll be looking at the concept of correlation. Correlation looks at the relationship between two variables. Or put differently, it looks at the behavior of one variable in relation to another variable. Let's elaborate on this by looking at an example. Say you've got two assets, asset A and asset B. Let's say the following is discovered in relation to the returns of these two assets. When asset A's returns increase, asset B's returns also increase. And when asset A's returns decrease, asset B's returns also decrease. We can therefore say that these two returns, or these two assets rather, are positively correlated. When one goes up, the other goes up, and when one goes down, the other one goes down. Now let's say you had asset C and asset D. In terms of the returns of asset C and D, the following is observed. When asset C's returns go up, asset D's returns go down. Or alternatively, when asset C's returns go down, asset D's returns go up. These two assets are said to be negatively correlated. A positive correlation means that the assets or the variables move in the same manner. So when one increases, the other one also increases. And when one decreases, the other one also decreases. A negative correlation means that the assets do not move in the same manner. In actual fact, they move in opposite directions. You can attach a value to the correlation between two variables or between two assets. If assets are perfectly positively correlated, that means then when one asset moves or increases, let's say by 10%, the other asset also increases by the same magnitude. If the asset decreases, say by 10%, the other asset also decreases by 10%. This is known as perfect correlation, and the correlation coefficient, the number that you attach to these two variables to describe how it is that they move together, would be a positive 1. Perfect negative correlation means that when one asset increases, say by 10%, the other asset behaves in a different manner. It decreases, and not only does it decreases by the same magnitude of the increase of the other asset. So the correlation coefficient, the number that we attach to these two variables to describe the relationship, is -1. So the relationship between two assets in terms of their movements in relation to one another can be described by attaching a correlation coefficient to it, and the correlation coefficient will lie between a positive 1, which indicates a perfect positive correlation, and negative 1, which means a perfect negative correlation. Let's now have a look at how this would show up on a graph. Let's say we've got asset A, its returns show the following behavior. Let's say the name of this asset is Ferrari shares. So the vehicle manufacturer, Ferrari, its share price has exhibited the following behavior over a period of time. If another asset is perfectly correlated to the asset which we call Ferrari, then it will display a graph that is similar to that of Ferrari. So this asset could be, say, the share price of Porsche. So this makes sense, right? Ferrari or Ferraris are bought when the economy is doing well and people have money, but so are Porsches. So when people have money, there'll be a higher demand for Ferraris, which will drive up the sales of Ferraris and therefore drive up the returns of the business that sells Ferraris. But the same will also happen with Porsche. So the share prices of Ferrari and Porsche could conceivably move in the same manner. Now let's have a look at perfect negative correlation. Let's say you have one asset and this asset displays the following behavior over time. Let's say this is the asset of a company that sells steak. Now a company that shows or has a perfect negative correlation with this company here that sells steak would display the following behavior in terms of its returns. When steak goes up, it would go down, and then when steak goes down, it would go up. Again, when steak or the share price of steak goes up, it would go down, and when the share price of steak goes down, it would go up. Let's say this is a company that sells corn. So when people have money, they'll buy steak, and consequently, they'll buy less of corn. And then when the money dries up, people will buy less steak, driving down the price of steak, but will buy more of the basic food stuff, which is corn, which would drive up the price and therefore the return of corn. This would be what we call a perfect negative correlation. Lastly, you can get a correlation coefficient of 0. That means there's no discernible relationship between how one asset or one variable moves in relation to another. There's no pattern, there's no behavior that shows the connectivity between these two assets.